All right, so I'm late to reviewing this. The reason is just that I was sick and I literally could not bring myself to record a video. But alas, I am healed and I am ready to talk about Your Friendly Neighborhood Spider-Man episodes 3 through 5. So, we start off episode 3 with Peter being just completely freaked out by Norman knowing his secret identity. I will say I do appreciate the initial hesitancy from this version of Peter Parker. I feel like the Tom Holland Peter Parker was just very like ready to work with Iron Man. I feel like there wasn't as much hesitancy, unless I'm just misremembering Civil War. But yeah, I kind of appreciate that at first Peter doesn't want to work with him. We get this cute little scene with Peter hanging out with Nico. We learn that Nico is a foster kid, actually. We also get a little glimpse of what I believe are her parents in this picture in the background of this shot here. And, I talked about it in my last video about the show, but Nico is actually a character in The Runaways, which is the basic premise of that show. It was on, I want to say ABC, or was it Hulu? I think it was Hulu, actually. But the basic premise of it is that the Runaways are like a group of children of supervillains. So presumably her parents are supervillains also in this show, and I think she's probably a foster kid, not because her parents died, but because her parents like abandoned her to go be supervillains. Or I don't know, maybe it was a situation of like they didn't want to involve her in their dangerous lifestyle, so they like dropped her off at a foster home as a baby. Like that's also possible. But the other interesting thing is that she has a picture of them, so I feel like she probably wouldn't have a picture of them if. Well, I guess what I mean by that is she lived with them long enough to like know them and have memories of them. But I feel like if they would have abandoned her like at an old enough age for her to have gained those memories, I feel like she wouldn't have a picture of them if they abandoned her. So my guess is that it's going to be revealed at some point in the show that her parents fake their deaths somehow and are just out being supervillains. And so that's why she's in foster care. My guess is that her parents are either going to be like villains of the week, or potentially just because she's one of the main characters, or I guess she's one of the side characters of the show, potentially villains of a season in a future season. So we'll see what they do with that, but things to keep in mind. We also get Peter and Norman's little meeting here, where Norman is trying to convince him to let him help him. We also get like another parallel to Civil War, where when Tony and Peter meet in Captain America: Civil War, Tony shows Peter this like same exact shot to be like, "Oh, this is you, isn't it?" And so that's kind of cute. But yeah, again, I appreciate the hesitancy of Peter to work with Norman. He's not all gung-ho about it. He understands like risks and that are involved and stuff like that. So I like the little detail of the show. We also get introduced to our villains of the week. They're like these Bonnie and Clyde type couple. I really like them. I thought they were a lot of fun. I like the girls' character design. You know what I mean? I just appreciate the artist's work, if you know what I mean. We also get this really cute, this really wonderful scene where Aunt May is throwing out a bunch of old stuff of Uncle Ben's, and listen, I don't want to necessarily turn into too much of like an MCU hater, but it really just is true that the MCU Spider-Man movies just didn't really have scenes like this. Like, they didn't have scenes where Peter and Aunt May were just like talking and having an emotional conversation. Again, unless I'm forgetting them, it has been a minute since I've seen those movies, but I don't think they have like an emotional conversation until she's dying. And then they like shoehorn in the Peter, with great power comes great responsibility. Like, it's pretty wacky that that like your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man in like the first 3 episodes are doing more with the characters of Peter Parker and Aunt May than John Watts did in 3 fucking movies. Because yeah, their little conversation where Aunt May is talking about how she's finally able to move on and actually give away a bunch of Uncle Ben's stuff is actually pretty like pretty sobering stuff, pretty pretty good shit that again we just didn't get in the MCU Spider-Man movies. We also see that Peter grabs Uncle Ben's old camera, which we can probably assume is the camera that he's going to be using in order to, become a photographer at some point. We also see Uncle Ben's, I guess, like, bowling shirt. I'm not really sure if Ben worked at a bowling alley or if he was just a really good bowler. I'm not really sure. But yeah, really good scene. We also got this other scene with Lonnie where he offered to pay for everybody's lunch, everybody being Nico, Peter, and Pearl. And it's just like, bro, it's like, you don't roll like that. Why are you even offering to pay people's lunch? So it's like, I appreciate that Lonnie isn't necessarily like the perfect guy, right? Like, he definitely does have character defects, and I think one of his character defects is just like his insecurity, where I think like obviously he's there on a scholarship, but he doesn't want to seem poor, right? So he's like, yeah, I'll pay for everybody, but then he ends up not actually having enough money, and he ends up having to only eat an apple while he paid for everybody else's lunch. So yeah, a good moment that just showcases some more of Lonnie and gives him a bit more depth as a character. Then Lonnie and Pearl end up having to leave early because Lonnie had an emergency at home. And again, I guess another one of Lonnie's character defects is that, again, his insecurity of his home life. Like, he asks Pearl to drive him home because it was an emergency, but he doesn't want her to actually he didn't actually want to take her to where he lives. He didn't want her to see his neighborhood, and he clearly didn't want her to, go inside of his house or anything like that. So, although to be fair, in this case, it was a legitimate emergency, so it's not necessarily for her to go in anyways, but it's obvious that, or like Pearl says that he's never invited her to come see his family or anything like that. But yeah, his dumbass brother basically joined a gang. And so that's why they had to call Lonnie home. And yeah, dumbass brothers doing dumbass things. Am I right? Surely that won't have long-lasting effects on Lonnie and his character in the show. So we then go back to our Bonnie and Clyde villains of the week, and they're robbing a bank. So, actually, in the first scene that we saw them in, they were actually they were like buying, these like bionic prosthetics. They give him super speed, and they give the girl, laser arms or whatever. And so they're able to rob the bank with it. And overall, pretty cool power set, I would say. I especially seeing them fight Spider-Man later on in the episode is pretty fun. But yeah, actually, even at the beginning, I think you're able to actually see Doc Ock's like logo on it. I want to say, and I want to say that when I was watching it, I was going like, I wonder what that logo is. Probably not actually. I probably wasn't thinking about that at all when I was watching the episode. Then we see Peter looking through some of the old photos, and we see Aunt May blowing a kiss at Uncle Ben, which is very sad. We see little baby Peter I guess they adopted a cat at some point. I guess they were throwing Uncle Ben a birthday party. Uh, yeah, man. Kind of interesting. I guess it seems like they're probably never gonna show Uncle Ben. Um, just because this is kind of MCU adjacent, and I don't know if this show would be allowed to necessarily show Uncle Ben when the MCU never bothered to show him. Although I don't know if that's really true, because it's technically like a what if situation. So they technically, I feel like they should be allowed to show Uncle Ben if they wanted to. I don't know. I just find it. I just found it interesting that he wasn't in any of the pictures. Although in some sense it does make sense because it's his camera, so he's probably never just going to hand it off to somebody to take a picture for him. It's not like his phone or something where you could just hand it off to somebody and be like, "Hey, take a picture." So I don't know. We'll see though. Hopefully the show has the balls, the kahunas to actually show Uncle Ben at some point. So yeah, then we get the fight with Peter and the Bonnie and Clyde people. And yeah, like I said before, seeing Spider-Man fight a speedster is actually pretty interesting. And the girl, she just has like lightsaber arms, so it's not necessarily as interesting, but kind of interesting nonetheless. Then we see Lonnie track down his brother through his phone because they have like a family plan that allows them to track each other's phone. There was a pretty funny joke about that. And yeah, it turns out his brother is indeed with a gang, and the gang leader, they reveal him, it's this guy named Big Donovan. And yeah, I like this gang. You know, so far they seem like a pretty traditional gang that you'd see in in media. There's nothing like especially comic booky about them. But you know, I'm trying to remember, is this the same gang from the from Spider-Man Web of Shadows? Because there's like a gang war in this show, and I don't know if it's the same gang war that was in Spider-Man Web of Shadows. I'm gonna go with my headcanon and say that it is. Spider-Man Web of Shadows also had like ridiculously large gang members, like Big Donovan, that they would like just tower over Spider-Man, which is pretty funny. And then yeah, I guess in order to save his brother, Lonnie decides to trade himself. He's like, "Hey, let my brother go, and I'll do your bidding, Big Donovan. I'll be a part of your gang." Honestly, I feel like Lil Bro deserves to learn his lessons, right? Consequences of actions. I don't know why the fuck Lonnie needs to just throw away his future just because his dumbass brother decided to join a gang. Not really. He's obviously making the right choice here, but the show did a very good job of making me really like Lonnie and being very invested in his future and him like bettering himself and getting out of his current circumstances, and seeing him like just throw his life away in this moment was genuinely distressing. But yeah, going back to the Spider-Man fighting the Bonnie and Clyde people, Norman Osborn actually like hacks into his communications and starts like helping him out and giving him tips and stuff. Starts telling them that their devices will actually overheat, you know, giving them tips on how to handle everything. Very interesting. So no, you actually do see the Doc Ock logo here. So yeah, and also I forgot to let the Disney Plus UI leave before I took the screenshot. Screw you. I apologize for nothing. But yeah, then we see Peter's able to beat them with Norman Osborn's help, and so he decides to accept his help. But again, takes him a while. You know, it's not just like immediately like, yes, Mr. Osborn, yes, I'll do. I love you, Mr. Osborn. I'll do anything, Mr. Osborn. Yippee! I don't know. Okay, you know what? Maybe I am an MCU Spider-Man hater. Honestly, watching this show is maybe making me an MCU Spider-Man hater. I don't know. Oh well. And yeah, so there's actually like kind of a parallel where, as Peter is shaking Norman Osborn's hand, it like cut to Lonnie shaking Big Donovan's hand. So obviously like a parallel in their character arcs. So yeah, kind of interesting. How Lonnie is sort of low key like the another. He's kind of like the co-lead of the show in a way. I feel like as far as at least as far as like screen time and character development, like Lonnie is like the second most important, aside from Peter, which is just interesting, as we will get to later. Though what am I saying? This is a spoiler discussion. Yeah, like they reveal at the end of like episode 5 that Lonnie's actually Tombstone. So clearly they're leading up to like him getting superpowers and becoming a supervillain by the end of the show, if not the first season. So yeah, cool stuff. So I guess Lonnie at the end of the day is going to end up being more of the antagonist, I guess. Not necessarily the co-lead, but the antagonist. So anyways, episode 4 starts off with Peter just sucking ass at presenting. He's giving this just like ass presentation of his research that he's been doing at his internship. And then this guy just starts roasting him into oblivion. Just absolutely destroying him. Then it all gets interrupted when Peter gets called to see Norman. And I gotta say this, I feel like Norman should know better than to just randomly be calling Peter out of his internship situations, where it's like he should know that that's suspicious. People are going to be asking questions about why they're doing that. And so I don't know. I feel like he would do better to just have them meet after their internship. But anyways, he goes off to see Norman, and there's this one moment where Dr. Connors starts like roasting the guy who was roasting Peter. And not gonna lie, Dr. Connors kind of doing something for me. Never thought I would be saying that about the lizard, but alas, here we are. And there's nothing I can do about it. T'Challa, we see T'Challa's dad posing with Norman Osborn in a picture, which is kind of fun. Although I guess as this is going on, I think he would have just died, right? Because this is going on during the events of Civil War. So that's less fun. But at least he is immortalized shaking hands with Norman Osborn. So then we see Harry meet Peter as Peter and not Spider-Man, and they have a fun little exchange. I kind of like how they're handling their relationship. Like, they're not just immediately becoming best friends, right? We see their relationship sort of growing pretty organically, and it's not just like there's like, oh, it's Harry and Peter, they're best friends now immediately. It's like there's like an initial hesitance from Peter to even want to work with Harry, and it's not really until Peter hears that Harry is lonely that he even invites him to hang out with him and Nico. So I like the way they're handling it so far. I also like that they address the Sokovia Accords, and we even see like the airport battle in from Civil War. I'd be curious to see how exactly this all plays out in this universe, because obviously Peter wasn't there. He wasn't involved. So did Tony Stark go out and get some other superhero? I don't know. I'd be curious to know. We see Osborn give Peter a bunch of terrible suits. This one, he gets stuck in a cape at one point, which was a pretty funny bit. We also see Lonnie continue to not tell Pearl about any of his personal life, even though now he's kind of in a situation where being in a relationship with him is low-key dangerous. So you would think that he would be like, hey, Pearl, yeah, I'm kind of fucked. So I'm either going to not tell you and break up with you, or tell you and I guess let you make that decision, But yeah, pretty messed up that Lonnie just won't tell Pearl about his personal life. But especially pretty messed up that he's not gonna tell her that he's in a gang now. So he's like, hey, here's a rose or whatever. It's from my mom's garden. So that this relationship and the problems within it are obviously going to come to a head at some point. So, well, I was going to say, I guess I'm excited to see that, but not excited is the wrong word, but narratively, I am interested to see where it leads. Jesus, I have hiccups. Norman also gives Peter this terrible, like, Bug-a-Man suit. There's a fun bit where he literally gets, splats on a windshield, which is pretty funny. There's also this funny scene where, like, Lonnie is hanging out in the gang's warehouse, and Big Donovan is like, why are you doing homework, boy? What are you, some nerd that's doing homework? But I actually think that Big Donovan is, like, way more manipulative in his actions than you might expect. Just because when you actually look at everything that Big Donovan does, it's like he's trying his hardest to make sure that Lonnie is not actually succeeding in his life outside of the gang, right? Like, he's insisting that he not study for his classes, right? He's calling him in when or during his football practice. So it's like, once you're in the gang, it's like Big Donovan is going to do everything that he can to make sure that you don't have anything outside of the gang. Which, I mean, pretty smart on his part, I guess. But not good for Lonnie. We get more of Osborn's terrible suits where Spider-Man ends up scaring this child as he saves her balloon. Then we go back to Lonnie. Big Donovan sends him off on a food run, but it ends up being on the rival gang's like territory, and so Lonnie ends up getting chased off by the rival gang. And again, Big Donovan actually like straight up says, I think, if I remember correctly, that he literally sent him over there so that the rival gang could see his face, and again to sort of like entrench him deeper into like the criminal underworld. Norman eventually concedes that his suit sucked ass, and that he needs a suit, and that Peter needs a suit that's more like him. And so we finally get this as like the final, quote unquote, final suit. Obviously, I don't think this is going to be like the final suit, right? Like, like at some point, we're going to get a more traditional looking suit, but this is by far the best that they showed thus far. It actually somewhat resembles a Spider-Man suit. But then we also get introduced to this Rhino gang. So the girl in the back is Rhino. And it's like, I think she's supposed to be Rhino, right? Like this universe's version of Rhino. I'm actually not sure. Do they call her a Rhino at some point? I don't remember. But overall, I really like this gang. I think they're really funny. And I like all the like backstabbing and faux like loyalty that they did with this gang. I thought it was actually pretty entertaining. But we also see an interesting moment where the police are chasing the Rhino gang, and Peter has to choose to stay behind and let them go, not let them go, but the police were chasing after them. But he like stayed behind to help civilians, which, just an interesting moment to showcase Peter's morality. There's also an interesting moment where the Rhino like abandons her gang because she realizes that they're about to get caught, so she like grabs the money and jumps out the car. And it's interesting because it's like, oh, so she's like she's unloyal, and so she's just running off with the money. But then we find out that she was actually just escaping so that she could get like she could buy the helmet from Doc Ock, which would then allow her to free them. So it's like, oh, they actually are pretty loyal to each other. But then later on, like they end up being disloyal to her, and it's just like an interesting set of circumstances that they build up for this group. Um, but yeah, the episode ends with like Peter or Harry seeing Peter as Spider-Man, and this moment felt a little weird because it's like, well, it's like you could actually see in the frame when Peter is getting into the building, like you can see Harry there with Norman. So it's like I feel like Peter would have seen him there before he walked in to Norman's office. The only thing I can maybe think is like maybe like in universe the windows are tinted, because I mean that would make sense if you're Norman Osborn, but they should have then tinted them in the show. So I don't know. But either way, there was obviously supposed to be like a surprising moment twist. Harry knows that Peter is Spider-Man as well. Oh wait, is that how the episode ends? No, I think it actually ends with Rhino buying the weapons from Dr. Octopus and the reveal that Dr. Octopus is behind the prosthetic weapons from the Bonnie and Clyde people as well. And yeah, we actually see it's the same logo on his little jacket. And I think this is episode 5, right? We're in the last episode now. I don't know. I just took a bunch of images, screenshots. You know what I mean? I probably should have kept better track of what episodes they're from. But yeah, so Rhino, she like buys this helmet off of Doc Ock, and it's like the weirdest set of powers where like I think the helmet gives her super strength as well as like Taskmaster powers, where she's able to like analyze fight patterns, and you know, then she's able to copy them or whatever. And then she can also just randomly shoot lasers out of her head. It's just like the weirdest assortment of powers. Doc Ock also has this weird like ginger twink lab assistant who's just like casually there. He's an assistant for a criminal. It's like kind of a weird situation there. We also learn more about Doc Ock's like insecurities. Like he wants to be more renowned. Like he verbally says that he deserves to be more renowned than people like Norman Osborn and Tony Stark, stuff like that. So that's clearly where he's coming from, where he's basically like building stuff for criminals so that he can make enough money to eventually, you know, fund his real science projects. Norman, now that Harry knows that Peter is Spider-Man, decides to make Harry the dude at the desk, which is honestly makes a lot of sense. Norman has CEO duties to fulfill. Peter obviously very hesitant to it because he doesn't want to endanger a child, even though he himself is a child, but you know what I mean. And so he's kind of like offsetting with, or what's the word I'm trying to think of? He kind of tries to push Harry away at first. But you know, Harry offers to drop Peter off at school, which I think probably makes them a little closer. And so like it's kind of funny because Harry or Peter, I guess, is like kind of terminally offline, where he had no idea that Harry was like super famous, because I guess he just doesn't go on social media, whatever the social media is of the Marvel universe. So he's very terminally offline, which quite frankly makes me admire him way more than any of his heroism, because goddamn do I need to get offline. But yeah, Nico starts sort of telling him about him, and he starts like she starts showing him pictures of his social media feed, and there's an interesting like selfie that Harry took with this girl. Now obviously she's very unique looking, right? Like she has white and black hair, but also she has different colored eyes. Now I don't know if this is supposed to be like, or if she's in some way related to the Scorpion gang that we meet later in the episode, because Scorpion also has different colored eyes. I don't know if they're actually related in that way, or if she's going to end up being a part of that gang or something like that, but just a little thing that I caught. I don't know. We'll see. Lonnie's gets chewed out by his coach for missing practice, and again, Big Donovan just completely ruining his life on purpose, I believe, literally trying to make sure that he does not have a life outside of his gang. We also get another scene of Lonnie not telling Pearl anything. And yeah, again, I am anticipating this relationship not heading anywhere good. We also get a fun scene where Nico is like debating the Civil War conflict, right? Like the debates that we had in 2016, where we were like, Tony is correct because of this reason and this reason, but Cap also has some good points over here and here. So that was kind of a cute scene, being able to relive 2016 in that way. Probably the only one of the few ways in which I would actually want to relive 2016, quite frankly. We also see Peter not being completely autistic, right? Realizing that Nico is like scared of losing a friendship with Peter because of all of his things. So Peter bought tickets for them to go see a movie together, which is very cute stuff, that Peter is a good friend while being a hero. Incredible stuff. And yeah, Lonnie, I assume he's getting kicked off of the football team for sure after this, because like after getting chewed out by his coach, he ends up having to leave his football practice, which is just like, okay. Like, yeah, like he's probably done with that. And I believe if he gets kicked off of the football team, that probably means he gets kicked out of the school as well. So yeah, he's just screwed. He's just straight up screwed. Harry has like a conversation with Peter while Peter's out being Spider-Man. And one of the interesting thing that gets pointed out in this conversation is that Harry sort of says that he was homeschooled, and that because of that he's actually pretty lonely. And I just think that's like the moment where I think Peter realized that he can actually somewhat relate to Harry, and that, or maybe not even relate, but empathize with Harry. And I think is like the moment where Peter kind of maybe decides that he can be friends with him, and that, he then decides to invite Harry out with him and Nico at the end of the episode. So I thought that was a pretty good moment. But yeah, then we see Rhino saving her friends from prison. And then we get a fight with her and Peter. Again, she has like weird Taskmaster powers. It's just okay. And then she also has super strength, so she's able to like physically fight Spider-Man, all from the helmet, I think, because I don't think she has superpowers without the helmet. We also see her, so the two thugs on the right, they decide to just abandon her while she's fighting Spider-Man. So there's no honor among thieves, even though she literally just saved them. But the guy on the left stays behind. And then this fight is actually paralleled with a gang war with the Big Donovan crew and the Scorpion crew. I know they have names. I don't remember what they are. And then we actually see Scorpion. Now, I am assuming that this guy is going to end up being Scorpion. You are correct, literally just because he has a big scorpion tattoo. I think I'm right, though. As you can see, he also has different colored eyes, which is interesting. And yeah, so there's a moment where Peter, Rhino, in order to beat Spider-Man, she like starts shooting a laser at the guy on the left. And so Spider-Man, she anticipates Spider-Man is going to step in front of him and block the laser blast. And that's like paralleled with Lonnie saving Big Donovan when the Scorpion is about to stab him, which is interesting. And yeah, Lonnie essentially making himself an enemy with Scorpion. Like now it's like personal between them, which is not good. You don't want that happening to you. So yeah, he's just so screwed. It is Jover for Lonnie. The cops come in and they break up the gang fight, so that will be resolved in another episode, I guess. This guy, big mad at Rhino for using him as bait. And then while Rhino is like squeezing and squishing Peter, this guy saves him. Because he's like, hey, you owe me one, buddy. Or I owe you one, actually. So I want to save you. And you'd think that would make him and Spider-Man friends, but he goes on a very long monologue explicitly stating why, no, they are not friends, and that if he sees Spider-Man again, he will kill him, which is very funny. Yeah, we actually got a better look at Nico's parents because she's looking at the time while waiting at the movie theater. So, yeah, I don't know. They keep on showing us her parents, so I assume that they're going to come back as villains at some point in the show. So, it'll be interesting to see when that happens. But then, yeah, I was actually expecting for this to be a moment where Peter gets to the movie theater late, because that's just what happens in Spider-Man media. But they kind of subverted my expectations because he arrives on time. And yeah, it's actually interesting that they're using Lonnie as the character that's having a really hard time leading a double life, where it's like everything that's happening to Lonnie is like where his personal life and his schooling and whatnot and his career is like taking a backside to his double life as a gang member. Like all of that stuff would be happening to Peter in any other Spider-Man show. But they're kind of putting that all on Lonnie while allowing Peter to sort of live comfortably as Spider-Man for a moment. And I think, and I don't mind that because, I mean, we'll see how it's ultimately handled, but Lonnie's story is honestly more of a Greek tragedy. And I think that that Peter's story is sort of going to end up coming to its own headway when everything is working fine for him, but then he realizes that Norman Osborn is not like an ethical actor. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. But I actually like how they're sort of twisting the Spider-Man story around. And yeah, then as I mentioned before, we see Peter invite Harry to hang out with them. Nico, obviously not jazzed, but honestly, my assumption is that this is going to end up being like our trio of Peter's friends, kind of like, you know, their version of Peter and MJ and Ned, or I guess Peter and Harry and MJ from the Raimi movies. But you know, it's sort of the friend group that we mainly follow. My guess is that that's where this is going to lead, and Nico's probably going to end up liking Harry at some point. And yeah, at the end of episode 5, Lonnie ends up getting his nickname solidified as Tombstone, which not great. Pretty much definitively saying that he is going to end up being a supervillain. Yeah, I don't actually know that much about Tombstone. I've only ever seen him in like video games as like side quests, and I think he was in like some episodes of some cartoons. But yeah, I know in the first Spider-Man game, his whole thing was that he has like impenetrable skin. So I think he might also have super strength, but he definitely has impenetrable skin. So I don't know. Lonnie's going to get dumped into a vat of chemicals at some point or something. So we'll see. And then he's going to do whiteface. He's going to pull a Michael Jackson, I guess. But not looking forward to seeing that. But I guess that just means that the show has done an effective job of getting me to like the character. So yeah, really, really good set of episodes, man. And I'll also say, I really like the fact that Disney is putting them out in chunks as opposed to weekly, because, you know, Disney Plus shows, they just don't have, like, the episodes don't have like hour-long runtimes, which is kind of annoying. But it's kind of made less bad if I actually have like 3 or 2 episodes to watch at a time. It makes it more of a meaty and fulfilling experience. So yeah, let me know what you think about these episodes in the comments down below, and I will see you in the next video. Goodbye.